show here in just 1 second. Showboating Sports, guys. Hey, it's your man Scott Free. We are in this thing today. So before we go any further, if you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and share. And make sure you hit the notification bell so that way when we do these videos every nightly, and when I make other videos, you guys will know about it. So what we're going to do tonight is how I think I'm going to show you guys my format here. My format is... as I'm doing my videos, sometimes you have people in the comment section, right? So I do it live. So in case people want to call in, which the number, if you look down in the comment section, is pinned in the comment section, that you can call in and sound off. And so, like I said, my channel here, we want to make sure that everybody has a voice. I'm definitely talking about how I don't like people in the fight game coddling people. So, like I said, if you see someone that you think that I'm biased against or I'm not keeping it real and you want to call in and give the smoke, hey, man, we're here for that. If not, you want to be in the comment section and you want to just leave some comments in the comment section, hey, we all for that too. So without no further ado, we're going to start the show. But tonight's show is about top heavyweights of all times. Everybody has their list of top heavyweights of all times. And if you look here, I'm going to put up a picture, and this picture right there shows a lot of heavyweights that you see from all times, right? I mean, it's not all of them, but it's a nice, good variety of them. So what do you guys think? Who is your top heavyweight of all time? That's what I'd like to know. I have a few different heavyweights for different eras and stuff. Like I said, the phone lines are open. You guys want to call in, it's fine. We'll keep those phone lines open throughout the show. And so if you look on here, you see a lot of fighters: Jack Johnson, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali. You got you got a lot of people on here, right? Rocky Marciano. You just got so many great fighters. You know, it's just so many, man. Like I said, I like fighters in different eras for different reasons, right? And I think that I can't say a fighter is the best of all times. I just can't say that. I mean, I know you guys are probably thinking to yourself, you got to have somebody that you believe is the best of all times, right? But I don't really have somebody that I say is the best of all times. I have someone that I say is a really good fighter, and I do fighters by era. I definitely do it that way. I don't think I go out and say one fighter, you can put him in any era, and he'll dominate. And the reason why I say that is because you have fighters like Jack Johnson. They fought 20 something rounds. Um, they had leather gloves on. He went through a lot. So the training and stuff that you didn't get to do in back in those days, and it was just a hard thing back there. And times are hard now with a lot of prejudice and a lot of biases and stuff that goes on in boxing. But definitely back then, it was really bad. Jack Johnson was paid $5,000 to fight for a good title shot, and the other guy had 30,000, right? So as you see you see that back in the day they also had A side and B side, so it really was kind of a a wide thing. And when I say wide thing is that you got one guy being paid 30,000, another guy being paid 5,000, which is kind of like it was for like it is in today's time. But back in those days, I don't want it to turn into like a racial thing, because we do know race plays a lot in the sport. But it was a lot of racial things going on back in those days where black people had to a lot of things black people had to go through. Couldn't go into restaurants. You had to come in the back of the restaurants. You couldn't get the best jobs. You got some of the worst things, which made it a lot harder for people to have to overcome. A lot of prejudice that was going on, a lot of lynchings, it was just a lot of stuff going on in those days that has died down on some eras of life. It has died down a little bit and has been a little crazy on the other ones. Like you have, I don't want to go into that, so we'll just keep it boxing tonight. We'll save that part of the day for another show some other time. But right now we're talking about the best of boxers, and I'm saying that in every era there was always some good boxers. But can one boxer go and make it another era? I think that these boxers today, they are good at what they do, but I also think because of how they eat now, how the vitamins and how all that stuff it comes out to help them, they're bigger, faster, stronger, and they have a lot of help. You know what I mean? You have steroids and stuff. They didn't have steroids back in the day. So a lot of people can push themselves and get their bodies to do things that people in the old days couldn't get. It's a lot of things that the people in this era have built off of what they've learned from the other era. So if you take people from this era and put them back in the era, there's a lot of things that they wouldn't know. It's a lot of things that they built up off of. It's like you look at like people like, let's take for instance someone like I don't know. Let's say somebody like Tyson Fury. A lot of people compare Tyson Fury to Muhammad Ali, right? So if you put Tyson Fury back in the Jack Johnson days where he had to fight 20 rounds, couldn't take PEDs, which he's been caught plenty of times with PEDs. So he couldn't take PEDs. And he mimicked his style off of Muhammad Ali a little bit. Some of that he mimics. And so you wouldn't have that if you put him back to fight Jack Johnson. Do I think that he could beat Jack Johnson back then? I don't think that Tyson Fury would be able to stop Jack Johnson. And I think with having to fight 20 rounds, I don't think Tyson Fury, with the way he eats and the way he doesn't take care of himself, would be able to stand up for 20 rounds. I really would doubt that. I doubt that very seriously. You also have people like Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a great fighter. Muhammad Ali had to go through a lot of stuff through segregation and all that stuff. I mean, he fought, and you see how it happened, how it affected his career. He didn't want to go fight for a war over at the Vietnam. He said, like, Vietnam, they never done anything to me, so I'm not going to go fight this war for a country who doesn't really care about me, right? And so that affected his career, which he was great. I think he could have been even better than what he was. He took a long layoff, financial ruins because of Don King and that kind of stuff. I think if you take a fighter like that and you put him back in the Jack Johnson era, would Muhammad Ali still be good? I think Muhammad Ali would really still be good, because I think that Muhammad Ali, I never heard him taking PDs or any kind of steroids or any kind of enhancements and stuff like that. Don't know if it was a lot of it out at that time. I don't know. But still the same. I think Muhammad Ali, what he had was a God-given talent The guy worked hard. He was definitely in shape. Do I think that he could go back in those times? I say he could. Fighter who I would love to see that would go back at that time, who I think actually who is equipped to fight in any era, would be George Foreman. George Foreman to me is an amazing fighter. He just is. Let's just stay with George Foreman just a little bit. Because I want to talk a little bit more about George Foreman, because George Foreman's physical capabilities, the way he approached boxing, he approached it like a true heavyweight that could transcend time. You could put George Foreman in any era because George Foreman had the height, he had the brawn. He's a big dude. Not only was he a big dude, he could really hit, and he understood boxing. He really did. Now, he was young. He got on the rope-a-dope. He lost to Muhammad Ali. But do I think, and Muhammad Ali outsmarted him in that fight. Now, if George Foreman had to have a rematch, do I think it would have ended the same way? No, I don't. I don't think Muhammad Ali could have used the same tactics. Could Muhammad Ali come up with a different tactic? Maybe so. I don't know. Never would have thought he would have came up to that and let George Foreman punch himself out. Younger fighter, stronger fighter. I wouldn't have thought that he would be able to stick through George Foreman's arsenal of punches that he brought out. You know, George Foreman George Foreman would hit you so hard, he could lift you up off your feet. I mean, that's how hard George Foreman hit. And a lot of people were scared of George Foreman, and they're rightfully so. They should be. George Foreman had that one-punch knockout power. George Foreman could take a punch. The dude was just an incredible fighter. So George Foreman is one of those fighters that I think that you can put him in any era. I think that in another 20 years from now, you could bring a George Foreman back, because I think George Foreman wasn't the fastest guy out there, but he wasn't the slowest. The young George Foreman had a little bit of speed now. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted now. He has some speed. But was he the fastest? No. He didn't have to be. His style worked perfect for him. You know what I mean? His style, George Foreman's body, size, power, the way he approached boxing worked for him. I mean, I think George Foreman had a complete style. I think that one of the problems was he was in there with a guy that was a little older and wiser and knew what he could do with George Foreman. He beat him mentally. And that's what made a true champion out of it. But do I think that George Foreman, if he could have gotten past that, I don't think a lot of other fighters would have figured that out. I don't think a lot of other fighters were as smart as Muhammad Ali. And what did George Foreman do? He left the sport, retired for a while, came back, and became champion of the world at an older age. At an older age, much older age, right? And what he didn't lose the power, but they say power is the last to go, right? He didn't really need a lot of speed, because the way he did, he walked you down. He came forward, and he handled business. I like George Foreman, man. I really do. I really like George Foreman. Like I said, he's one of those fighters. He's one of my top fighters. I liked him a lot. I like George Foreman a whole lot. I like Evander Holyfield too. But I don't think that Evander Holyfield, Mr. Finesse, salute, man. Glad to see you here. Man, the subject of the night is top heavyweights of any era. So we're talking tonight about some top heavyweights that you could probably put in any area, in any era, and some that you like. So please feel free to share some with us. Right now, I'm talking about George Foreman, because I feel George Foreman is one of those fighters that transcend time. I think you can take George Foreman and put him in any era, and I think that George Foreman is going to always come out to the top because his style, his size, the way he approached it. I think that Muhammad Ali got, I ain't gonna say it's lucky, but Muhammad Ali beat George Foreman mentally, and that's how he was able to beat George Foreman. But I think that if that didn't happen, man, Muhammad Ali was going to be in a world of hurting. You know what I mean? But Muhammad Ali is a really smart fighter, man. I mean, you can't take that away from Muhammad Ali. And I was saying that if you take people like Tyson Fury, who mimics his style a little bit out of Muhammad Ali, you take him back to the days of old where you had Jack Johnson out, and you took him back down there in that style, I don't think that it would translate good. I don't think that without Tyson Fury having PDs, sports enhancement stuff, he didn't have steroids and that kind of stuff. And then some of those guys fought for 20 rounds. I think it was like 22 rounds. Sometimes they fought. They fought out in 90-degree weather. I don't think that I'm pretty sure that Tyson Fury wouldn't be able to do that. Could Muhammad Ali do it? Maybe. I think that his God-given abilities, he could. Very smart person that translated into the ring. So he was more of a fighter who played chess instead of checkers. But then you had someone like George Foreman. I'm not going to say he was not as smart in the ring as Ali. Wasn't a smart fighter, but I don't think he was as smart as Muhammad Ali was in the ring. So I think that's what was his downfall before he retired. But if you take Muhammad Ali out of that, I don't think any other fighter, too many fighters throughout history could withstand George Foreman. I really don't. Mr. Finesse said Ali, Holmes, Holyfield, Wilder, Tyson. Those are your favorite? Yeah, those are some of my favorites too. Yeah. What do you feel about Jack Johnson and, some of those guys? Jack Johnson, some of the older fighters. Do you think that Larry Holmes, you could take Larry Holmes and Larry Holmes could go back in the days and fight those fighters? And what I was saying earlier too, and I'll just hip you to my train of thought. I'm thinking about fighters that I think that we can go back and fight in different eras. But also, excuse me, I don't crown a fighter being the best of all times, because I think with every era, there comes something with that era that only few fighters that I feel that you can take out of an era and take them back to another era. Is basically what I'm trying to say. Like I said, George Foreman, I think he can fight in any era. I don't think that Tyson Fury could fight in any era. I don't know about. I think Vander Holyfield is a really good fighter. I really do. Some of them older brawls and stuff with like George Foreman, with George Foreman being young, I just don't know how Holyfield will hold up back in those eras. And like I said, in different eras, you think about it. You got all this nutritionists out there. You have weights. You have all this, like the snack program. You got so much stuff out now that helps so many fighters reach their full potential. And I think back in the day in different eras, you had so many things that was in the way to make fighters not reach their full potential. You had a lot of outside influences for a lot of black fighters. Then you also had a lot of fighters not being able to eat properly, it's a lot of stuff that went in on that. Okay. He said, I think Ken Norton was very underrated. I do too. I think Ken Norton was very, very, very underrated. He said, Mr. Finesse said, to be honest, let me tap on this and see if I can highlight you, man. I don't know if I can highlight you in. But anyway, to be honest, I haven't seen enough of Jack Johnson, Joe Louis era to claim a real opinion. I just know from what I watched, Jack Johnson would give any heavyweight hell no matter the era. That's my point. See, that's where I'm at on that. I saw some old footage and done a little bit of studying on Jack Johnson, done a little studying from a lot of other stuff. But I think that with every era, I think we do people a disservice when we say, oh man, this fighter can just go beat all these people from every era. Like how Jordan and the Kobe effect. Jordan was a really good athlete, was a really good basketball player. But some people say, oh man, you know what? If Kobe was in the era with Jordan and they grew up together, but then Kobe wouldn't be Kobe. Kobe mimicked a lot of his stuff off of Jordan. So if he didn't see all of that stuff and didn't have years of mimicking Jordan's moves, he wouldn't be that. Now, would Kobe be a good player? Yeah. Could he have been even better than Jordan? Maybe. Who knows? But he would have had to pull the way he approached the game, well, the way his moves and a lot of things he did that he mimicked off of Jordan, he would have had to be originated or pull it off of another basketball player from old. He maybe could have done it better than that. But I just say that those guys are two different eras. And when you see a guy that builds off of what another guy does, I think that that's a stepping stone, like Floyd. Floyd took a lot of stuff from a lot of fighters that he saw and, that worked with him. He had a whole lot of champions in his family that helped him work it out. So, yeah. All right. Let me see where we at on this. Hold on. Let me see my chat. My chat's getting in my way. Okay. All right. Ms. Finesse said, I think fighters were naturally stronger back then. And, yeah, I think they were too. I think that some of that hard work that they had to do that let's just be honest with it, man. Let's just be really honest. A lot of those shit jobs that a lot of black people did made them a lot stronger back in those days. You know what I mean? Lifting bricks and cinder blocks and a lot of things that we don't have now that we have now that they didn't have back then. A lot of machines, a lot of stuff that help us now that they had to do a lot more hard work. So physically, and everybody knows when you do yard work takes a lot out of you. So imagine doing yard work every day and out there doing a lot of stuff out there in the field, lifting hay, doing stuff. That stuff makes you physically strong. So when you got them big boys going in there like Jack Johnson and you got these big mountains like sorry about that. I thought it was somebody calling into the show. But you got those people that are just big. You got people like George Foreman is just huge, man. That stuff was bred in them dudes. George Foreman's like a big country type dude. It would be hard to stop somebody like that. Yeah. So he said, Mr. Finesse said, that's why I don't like comparing eras because there are a lot of changes in and out the sport that make the situation totally different. I agree with that. How can you compare guys that fought 20 times a year to guys fighting 2 times a year? Right. So yeah, that's how it goes. So I agree with that. But like I said, tonight, we're not going to say who's the best of all time. Sorry about that. So, like I said, man, it's just a whole lot, man. It is a whole lot about it. I was hoping somebody was going to call in, but somebody is hitting that in, but I didn't, But anyway, man. But it's a whole lot of stuff out there that I think. Hold on, let me see what you said. You said how can you compare a guy? Yeah. So you got a lot of people for over a period of time that have fought so many times a year. Like you said, 20 times a year, and you got these guys that fight 2 to 3 times a year. It just doesn't translate right. That's just my thought process. So I'm not saying that these guys are the best of all times, but I'm saying how do we look at fighters that have earned their way to be able to fight, that we can say they can fight in different eras. And I think that a lot of the people that you named earlier, let me go back. Let me see if I can go back to what you said. You said Ali, Holmes, Holyfield, Wilder, Tyson, those are your favorites. Man, those guys right there, I think that most of them can fight in different eras. I can't say that one guy will go out in each era and win it all. But I do say that these guys, it's a good thing, man. I love it. I love the debate. I think Lennox Lewis is a really good heavyweight. How do I think Lennox Lewis stack up? How do you think Lennox Lewis would stack up into the Ali George Foreman era? I think Lennox Lewis had a really good jab, man. But I think back in those days, man, you had to bring a little bit more to the table with a younger George Foreman. A lot of people saw what George Foreman did once he retired and came back, became champion again, fought people like Holyfield and fought, was it a Chris Bird? Was it a Bird he won title from? Was it Chris Bird won the title from? I believe it might have been Chris Bird. So you take somebody like that. I think that's what George Foreman won. But anyway, Lennox Lewis, I think Lennox Lewis is a really good fighter. I think Lennox Lewis could have been back in that day a little bit. Lennox Lewis, yeah, let's say Lennox Lewis. Who else? The Klitschko's, I don't know. I like the Klitschko's, but I don't know, man. I'm on the fence with those guys. I definitely don't think a fighter like AJ would. I don't give AJ credit. Lewis' height and jab would be a huge factor, but his chin might not have held up. I agree with that. I think Rockman, uh, who knocked him out. I think man, I just think that was a good night, man. I think that he had a puncher's chance, but I love how Lennox Lewis responded. Man. He came right on in. Man, that next fight, he showed you. Lennox Lewis had some fire out there. He had some fire in them punches, man. I like that about Lennox Lewis. Love that about Lennox Lewis. That, man, he had heart. And he was there, to prove that he was the best. Mr. Finesse says the Klitschko's are too stationary, and Vlad's chin is super suspect. I agree with that. I think that the Klitschko's came in an era that was a low point for boxing. And I know, and you know what, people give people like us a hard time when we say stuff like that, because they think, oh man, you guys just making excuses. You guys just don't like these guys or whatever else. No, man. Boxing hit a low point for a while. The heavyweight division was dead for quite a while. So those guys shine at a low point of the heavyweight division. He said, I don't question Lennox Lewis hard. Nah, me neither, man. He said he came back versus Rahman and McCall. Yeah, he did. And you know what? The way he answered back, Lennox Lewis, man, I like Lennox Lewis. I really do. I really like Lennox Lewis. And I think that a younger Lennox Lewis, man, I'd love to have seen him in there with the Klitschko's. I think he'd have ran through those guys, to be honest. I really do. I think Lennox Lewis would have been a nightmare for those guys. Because that jab, man, was awesome, man. And I know I tell you what's funny. He was trying to work with Deontay Wilder and trying to show Deontay Wilder how to work that jab and stuff. And man, that jab is so natural to him. And the way he was at an older age still popping that jab out to show Wilder that was crazy, man. Yeah, exactly. Nobody was watching the heavyweights in that era. It's like when Tyson, Holyfield, and that whole era, just Tyson bit the ear and all that. The excitement left, you know what I mean? And then, because I'll tell you what happened about heavyweights, man. The heavyweight division really started folding when the politics in boxing really just started really going through the roof. You just like now, look at it like this. When you really think about heavyweight boxing, and this is the truth, whether you love Wilder or hate Wilder, the dude is an exciting fighter. He's going to come in to win. He's going to try to knock the person out, correct? Now, most of his fights, 95% of his fights has ended up with knockouts in his favor, right? So that fighter is exciting. AJ is a decent fighter, but he doesn't bring that appeal. I don't look since Wilder has been hurt, since Wilder has had to take his 6 months off after breaking his hand, losing the fight, getting knocked out of the fight. You don't even hear the heavyweight division where people are just like, oh wow, yeah, let's go. Tyson Fury is supposed to fight Dillian White. Who cares? I like to see them fight. I love to see Tyson Fury knock out Dillian White. I don't care for Dillian White, just like I don't like Big Baby Miller. I don't like him. I mean, I don't really care for much those guys. Those guys use PED and they make the sport bad, right? So, but Tyson Fury uses PED too, right? So it really doesn't, I don't care, but I like Tyson Fury more than I like Dillian White, period. And you're right, Wilder brought the division back. He had it buzzing. I mean, he made people get off the fence. People wanted to tune in to, oh, bum Wilder, we want to get him knocked out. Oh, he's a bum, we want to see him get beat. Okay, now he's gone. And this is what I'm going to say about this. I blame the promoters. They do so much downplaying Wilder, right? Oh, Wilder is this. They make Wilder be the bad guy, a guy who's not skilled, a guy who they could care less for. But he brings so much excitement, they can make so much money off of him. Now that he's out of it for a little while, you hear nobody talking about the heavyweights no more. And now they're saying he might retire. I haven't heard him say that, so I'm not going to put that on him. But they're saying he could retire. But what will that do for boxing? What? AJ's not an exciting fighter. Nobody cares about AJ. AJ just got beat by Usyk, right? Nobody was really upset about it. It was like it makes sense. As a smaller fighter who's faster, AJ has a problem with smaller, faster fighters. Look at Andy Ruiz, who put him down. You know, he needs a bigger fighter that's a little slower. He can't handle that, right? So when it's going back, I don't think he'll beat Usyk. I don't think he'll beat Usyk again. I don't think he'll not again. I don't think he'll beat Usyk. But this is the thing. I think he'll try to jab and he'll try to do the Andy Ruiz thing. I think what AJ thinks he thinks he's on Wilder's level as far as being a knockout artist. He tried to knock Andy Ruiz out, didn't get him nowhere. Tried to go in there and try to manhandle Usyk. That didn't get him nowhere. So I think that his next round is, what can he do? He's going to have to work off the jab and run. Same way he did to Andy Ruiz. And hopefully he get ahead on the scorecards and get it back in his favor. But I just don't think AJ, I don't think skill-wise AJ is going to beat Usyk. AJ got some skills. I'm not talking down on him, but I think Usyk has a little better skills than him because he's a shorter, faster fighter. And I think that AJ, when he was fighting the guy, he wasn't fighting like a taller fighter should fight. He was kind of bending down and getting in there with him, and that was the whole wrong game plan. That was the whole wrong game plan. So even now, nobody is even talking about Fury versus White or AJ versus Usyk. Wilder is the face. He really is. And the sad thing about it is these people will cut their nose off to spite their face. You think about it. If I'm a promoter, right? Let's say I didn't like Wilder. Let's say you're a promoter, you didn't. But you know he brings excitement to it. Why not keep him in the game? Because when he came in, that made it a whole lot more exciting. His fights are more exciting, period. Whether you say the man can box or got skills or not, we know he can do. What he does very well. What did Bruce Lee say? Bruce Lee said, I am not afraid of a guy who has 1,000 moves. I'm more afraid of a guy who has one move that they practice 1,000 times. So you don't have to have all these different moves and all this stuff in your arsenal. Be good at what you do, and that's what Wilder is. Wilder knows this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going to do. Now, Wilder has Malik Scott on his team. I think some of it is a good thing, but I think some of it is a bad thing. So hopefully that Malik and Wilder, they can get Wilder together. Really. I think that Malik Scott, I think he had too much weight on Wilder, man. Just me personally, being a trainer. I was a trainer for many years, and that's what I train. I train different athletes, and so I understood the basis of it. The thing about it is that you get people like Deontay that is a lean fighter. You start putting that weight on him, you slow him down. You also, it's a lot more weight for him to carry. So you got him at 100. I mean, what was he? 239, 230, 229, 239, 230. He just had too much weight. Wilder is more effective at 220 and somewhere around that area, that area of it, about 220, somewhere around there. All right, let me see what you're saying on here. Let me see. Yep, Wilder brought back the division. All right, hold on, let me see. My thing is kind of highlighting on there. All right. AJ needs big, slow, stationary targets. He has no head movement, and it gets him into trouble every fight. It does. AJ has a sus chin and heart. That's a combination for disaster. Yeah, he does. And what Wilder represents in America's worst nightmare is America's worst nightmare. Yeah, a black man that's up there knocking out people, doing all that. So, yeah, it's in any sport like that. That's why Floyd had to play the bad guy. Once Floyd played the bad guy, then that's what helped Floyd. That Floyd became almost a billionaire because he knew that the hate, the disdain that people had for him. So he played on it. What Wilder, then he said, I hope Wilder comes back down in weight. I do too. He never used to gas out. The weight has slowed him down. And he said 215, 225, he's a beast. Yeah, I think he needs to be around the 220 area. And I think that this is it too. I think Malik Scott was his heart is in the right place, but I think what Malik needs to do is he needs to stick to training, and he needs to get someone like maybe Blu-ray or someone like that to do the the getting him in shape stuff. You know what I mean? I think he should stick to some of the training stuff, like how Derek James did. Derek James does that how he does Earl Spence. He trains Earl Spence, but he works with Earl. But what Earl had Blu-ray, now he has another company that comes in, his nutritionist, and they come in and get him in shape. That's exactly what he needs to do. He needs to separate himself from that. I think Malik Scott understands boxing, but he needs to understand his fighter a little bit more. His fighter's limitations and his fighter's what his fighter brings to the table is good. The jab is good. Work off the jab, right? Let Wilder be Wilder. Just like you said, you got some of this other stuff in his arsenal, but you should have never went in there just trying to really just box someone like Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury has some of the best skills as a heavyweight boxer. You don't go in there and box that guy. You go in there and you put that jab out there to disrupt him, and you stay on him. You keep walking him down, jabbing him, walking him down, jabbing him, and then you make him move and you make him do the running. You make him keep running back, because at the end of the day, yes, he's going to come in and try to put Wilder on the back foot, but that jab and maybe a little side-to-side movement, instead of moving straight back, go to the side with that jab and then fire in that right hand to keep him honest. You put it back on him. I think the game plan was wrong to go in there and try to outbox Tyson Fury. I think one other mistake that he definitely made is you don't give a puncher like Deontay Wilder puncher's gloves. You want to protect his hands because he already hits hard enough. Now, I was a little upset when it all went down and I saw Tyson Fury was grabbing those horsehair gloves, and I was like, yeah, man, what if Wilder does that too? That was just a knee-jerk reaction. But it'd be right before the fight came in and his ring walk, right before they got to the place and it was all going down. I had thought about that, and I was saying to myself that here it is, you got a puncher who already hits hard, who already breaks his hands. You had to protect that. You put him with horsehair gloves, he's going to break his hand. And that was my next thought. And I'd be damned, when they went in there to fight, guess what happened? He broke his hands. He broke his hands, man. And that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. You don't want no fighter out there breaking their hands. You really don't. And let me see who else I got on this pick. So you got Mike Tyson. You got Mike Tyson in here, right? Mike Tyson is one of those any era boxers. That was a really good boxer. I think Mike Tyson, before he went to jail, was a different boxer than when he came out of jail. That's what I think. All right, Mr. Finesse said he started well with the jab and the body work, and he's talking about Wilder here. He started well with the jab and the body work, but he was moving too slow and wasn't using his athleticism. He seemed to get tired fast. Yeah, man, he got tired real fast because of carrying all that extra weight. And one thing about it I didn't like is you're trying to make Deontay Wilder a whole lot stronger. And I understand that because that weight that Tyson Fury brought in, but making him put on all that weight and benching 315 pounds and getting his weight up, it was only going to help so much. That ain't really what he needed, because Deontay Wilder hits like a mule kicks. The way he hits is like a damn horse kick. So you want to enhance what he does and help him, put him in the best position, and that's jabbing. You work off the jab. You make sure he has enough stamina that he can withstand it, because the fights before previously, he was getting tired. So you make sure that he comes in at about 220, somewhere in that era, in that spot. You want him to come in at 220. I don't want to see him at 212, because that's where he was when he fought. I think it was Ortiz. I think he fought Ortiz. He was like 212. I don't think you want to bring him in at light. I think you want to keep him in at like 220, 220, 250, somewhere in there, somewhere in that era, in that area. That's what I would do. I would put him in there, let him come in at 220. So hopefully Malik Scott gets that together. I'm really hoping that, man. So like I said, you got Mike Tyson on here. Mike Tyson is a person that I think will be great is a great fighter, and I think he's one of those fighters that you can put him in any era. I really do. I think Tyson is that guy. I think Tyson is that guy for real. I really do. I think Tyson is that guy. I think the way Customato trained him, he trained him old school. Mike Tyson went in, it was like an old school type deal, I think. Customato was one of the old school trainers, man. He had him ready. He had him ready for war, man. I think training like that, man, it'll make those. I mean, come on, man. You can't deny Mike Tyson. Can't deny Mike Tyson. But then but then we had, what's funny is you got a lot of heavyweights this era right here, man. This era right here is, man, it's not good at all, man. It just really ain't, man. The way boxing is going down now at this heavyweight era, man, it's just sad, man. Politics is destroying boxing. You got people like Dillian White that he needs to be out of boxing, man. I'm just saying. I don't really care for Dillian White, man. The dude is he with these failed PED tests. I think him and Big Baby Miller should be out of it. I also think that Tyson Fury should have been suspended. I don't know how the hell he got out of it. I can't say that it's a black thing or a white thing because you still got Dillian White that keeps getting all these damn chances. And you know, people look at you like you being prejudiced or whatever else because you say, man, Tyson Fury should have been kicked out of sport or banned from the sport from that saying he had boar meat and that's why he failed. Stupid stuff to me. Stupid shit to me. Tyson Fury should have been banned. But also, the person who's driving the bus is Big Baby Miller. He should have been driving the bus for all these guys heading into retirement of a long suspension. Miss Finesse said, I would have loved to see how things turned out if he never went to jail. Yeah, I'd love to see how Mike Tyson turned out if he didn't go to jail too. And Don King destroying him. You know what I mean? One thing about Don King is he made the fights, but he destroyed a lot of fighters. Yep, he sure did. Mike Tyson would run through every heavyweight right now. Yeah. I'll tell you what's funny, man. I honestly, and it might just be me. I honestly think that if Mike Tyson was totally in shape, he could still beat some heavyweights right now today. Today. I think Mike Tyson could beat some heavyweights right now today. I would love to see it. I would love to see him come in and fight somebody like Ortiz, King Kong Ortiz. I think that would have been a good fight. I think that a fighter that's going to tire Tyson out with a good jab and run from Tyson, I don't know if Tyson's stamina would be there to be able to overcome that. I'm not sure, but I don't really see nobody out there with a good, crazy jab that I would see him getting away from. Somebody like Tyson gives a body attack like you wouldn't believe, right? I think if he fought somebody like AJ, I don't think AJ could stand up to Tyson. I really don't. I don't see. AJ's chin is not good enough for Mike Tyson, but I don't think his body can hold up. And I don't think AJ is fast enough to get away from Tyson for long. See, that's the thing about Tyson. Tyson's a shorter fighter, smaller fighter. So his win was great for where he was at a younger age. But at this age right here, I think that with how hard Tyson hits and the way these other heavyweights are doing, it's like Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder in their first fight. I think it was a difference of 13 punches. I think they both threw like less than 100. They both landed less than 100 and something punches. So they really didn't land a whole lot. You know what I mean? Some rounds, they weren't even throwing them like 5 to 10 punches. So if you got a fighter like that ain't too many punches with somebody like Tyson, Tyson very well could maintain in a fight like that. I think so. I hate to be like that because I might be biased going towards Tyson, but I think Tyson got the goods, man. I think at this age right now, he'll still give some of these guys hell. I feel that way. I don't know. I don't know if it will work, but I feel that way. Matter of fact, I would love it. I would love to see that fight. AJ and Mike Tyson. This is how it will go down.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
I would love to see it. I would love to see it. I love to see that. Just let the fight go down. Let's let Tyson come in. Just one good match. Let's see if Tyson still got that one night of greatness. I don't count the Roy Jones Jr. thing, but I do. But I like to see how Tyson got in shape. And I think Tyson is still working out. I love to see it. I love to see Tyson get a shot at something like that, just for shits and giggles. I would love it. Man, if he lost, hey, this is all I would say.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
That's what it is. That's what it is. But anyway, guys, that's straight up no chaser. That's how I feel about the heavyweight divisions of old. That's some of the fighters that I like. Like I said, I have fighters in different eras that I like for different reasons. Don't say there's one fighter that is the best of all times, because I shut down an era like I do in today's football. The quarterbacks today couldn't handle the football the way it was played back in the 70s and early 80s. So you have to shut an era down. I think in boxing, you have to shut an era down. I think that the Muhammad Ali era and this new era up here is totally different. And I think that George Foreman showed us that. I think George Foreman showed that him coming back as an older guy and still claim a title at the heavyweight division, I think that proved what I said. You know, he's a fighter that can go in different eras, and I think he proved that. I think that even with him being out of shape, because when he came in, he wasn't in the best shape. He had a little bit of a gut and all that. So with him being able to do that at an older age, imagine what he could have done in his prime in that era. And if you take him out of that era in his prime and you put him in this era of boxing sucks. It definitely sucks, man. I don't think it's any fighters that it's only a very few fighters. And I think politics are keeping some really nice heavyweights from moving up the ladder to get into the limelight. But like I said, guys, that's straight up no chaser. If it's a fighter on her that you think I was a little biased towards, or a fighter that you suggest that you think is a better heavyweight, please leave it in my comment section. So until tomorrow night, guys, make sure you guys stay tuned. We'll be on between, and this is Eastern Standard Time, that we'll be on between 10:30-ish, 11 o'clock. So feel free to come and join in. I'll make sure I have the number pinned in, that if you feel like you want to call in, you want to sound off, that's cool. Mr. Finesse, brother, thank you for showing up. Thank you for participating, man. Like I said, you always bring a lot of good sense to these conversations, man. And I love it, man. Love to see a guy who loves boxing just as much as I do, and who knows how to give a great response. So, man, salute you, brother, for coming in. And so to everybody else, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And until tomorrow, I'm out. Peace.